A new year means a new meta, which is why I went ahead and changed the tier list in a major way, moved tons of characters around, got rid of an entire category, RIP free-to-play gods, so that you can better understand the game and make the best decisions possible when you're ranking up characters, when you're building out teams, etc. in this crazy Barbie collection game going into its 10th year? It's been a long time, ninth year. Just, it's been a really long time for this game. So let's get into it with all of the changes before we address the elephant in the room, which is the What If Season 2, okay? That update, which is the December update. So, yeah, first things first, you'll notice that the Out of the Meta Please Rework category is much larger. It's also more organized, and it's also a lot closer to Borderline, because the Free-to-Play Gods category with Spot and Katie and Scorpion and Man-Thing and Omega Red is gone. It's gone because I feel like it no longer really holds a lot of value, and although those characters are good for the value they bring to your roster without having uniforms, without requiring uniforms, that is just, something that can be expressed in a video when you're reviewing, Spot or Omega Red or Man-Thing or whatever. So they should just be in their place on the tier list. If enough people hate this change, of course I can always revert it. I mean, I probably won't revert it to exactly what it was, but I can just add an additional icon that means that they're sort of, good without a uniform, and then I can just go ahead and give it to those characters. It's not really a big deal, but yeah. So you'll find Spot, Omega Red, and Man-Thing in Borderline, and then Katie and Scorpion are in Out of the Meta Please Rework, as it makes sense, and so is Molten Man. Speaking of Out of the Meta Please Rework, added a ton of new characters here. You'll disagree with me on some of them for sure. They're not all bad characters, and certainly there's a massive difference between like Hellcat and Electro, but the reality is that either Hellcat or Electro really doesn't bring much to the table. Electro has a leadership and a support, sure, but not really enough to put him in the lead support category, especially considering how strong not only speed types are, but now with Sin and stuff, how strong speed villains are. You got Hawkeye, you've got Gwenpool, Kate Bishop, Captain America Falcon, Molten Man, Scream, Gilgamesh, Mr. Fantastic, Sylvie, Supergiant, and Silver Surfer. I basically took a bunch of characters from Borderline who I basically never see used for anything, and I moved them over into Out of the Meta. You could argue that more characters deserve to be there, but it's a process that we'll take step by step. If you look at the Borderline, though, you'll see there's a lot of bolded characters. If they didn't come from the free-to-play gods category, then they came from the meta-ish category. I'm basically just trimming the fat from the left, side of the tier list, moving that way. So Squirrel Girl all the way down to Arachnite, they were all meta-ish. They're not really meta-ish, honestly. They're barely holding on. Same thing with Spectrum, Mephisto, and MODOK. Really, the only category of character that loses value much more slowly is Universals. Universals maintain their value for a lot longer, especially the meta-ish ones, because they have dual value for PvE, PvP, or they have some sort of insane niche leadership support like Dr. Voodoo, or they do something else, etc., etc. It is a bit jarring, I will say, to see a bunch of tier 4s in the meta-ish category. It is jarring. I mean, it's certainly jarring to see Captain America, Moon Knight, and Nebula, and Venom next to Nebula. We can zoom in now here so you guys can see this a little bit more clearly. But yeah, this is basically how it needs to go, because unfortunately there's just way too big of a gap between the value of some of these characters, and it doesn't really make sense to put them in the same field when they're not really doing as much for your roster, right? Like, Carnage, Black Panther, Hulk, Namor, we can still see a big impact on people's rosters, much less so for the other cats here that got moved down. Gamora Shadow Shell also got moved down to meta-ish, and then Iron Man Professor X also got moved down to meta-ish. No one got moved down from meta-dominating. I think it's a really good category. The only one that may need shifting down is Spider-Man. I think, actually, probably Spider-Man. But that is something that, some people will obviously disagree with me on. I think that actually makes a little bit more sense. I think that makes a bit more sense. But yeah. Anywho, with that out of the way, let's get to the update. So, What If Season 2 was a massive disappointment, especially if you've seen the show now. You know what happens in the last episodes. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but they absolutely 100 million% should have waited. I think this is kind of the final nail in the coffin for me, as per my opinion. As per MCU updates, Disney Plus updates, whether they should happen before the movie or the show comes out, at the same time or after. I think they have to come out after. I think Marvel Future Fight needs to stop releasing, show or movie content before or during, because there's just too many cool animations and too many cool Easter eggs that we are not getting from our characters, right? Spectrum, Miss Marvel, and Captain Marvel just feel so lame. They don't feel cool. They don't feel unique because they really couldn't reference the stuff in the movie. And same thing goes even more, in even higher degree of obvious, gap and sort of dissatisfaction for What If Season 2. Like, it's not even close, guys. It's not even close. Have you seen the episodes? It's not even close. They're not even close to being close. It's crazy. So yeah, overall, this is just a massive disappointment of an update. Kahori and Wenwu are just support characters, and they're not even good support characters. They're on the second tier of support characters, with people like Weapon Hex and Rescue, which are like old characters, and War Machine and shit like that. They're just not good. They're just not good, straight up, and that's a disappointment there. Hela is at the bottom of meta gods for Universal, and she's, in my opinion, she's worse than Thanos. She's about as good as Thanos, or a little bit worse. She's probably a little bit better for PvE than Thanos, maybe, and she's probably a little bit worse for PvP than Thanos. There's just not enough in her kit to really push her in one direction or another. The devs really were way too conservative when reworking Hela, and they didn't address really the character's needs outside of standardizing her heal. They didn't address the fact that she has no iframe ignore. They didn't address like so many things about the character. She still plays the same way, so if you're playing her in PvE, she does no damage on her 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then all of her damage is on the tier 3. This is, for most players, I think, for the majority of players, this is a dissatisfying way of designing a character, and it's a dissatisfying way of playing a character, because you essentially do nothing until you do a whole lot, and then as soon as the whole, like, when you're doing a lot of damage with the tier 3 with Hela, it's awesome. You're like, man, look at those bars flying. And then as soon as it's over, the reality sets in. You're like, oh my god, I have to sit here for the next like 12 to 14 seconds and just tickle the boss, and then I could do that again. And you're like, I just want to do that again. So yeah, you don't want every character to feel the same, when it comes to the consistency of their damage. Like, you do want characters like this, but I think for Hela, they could have done something. They didn't necessarily have to address her damage, but they could have addressed her iframe ignore. They could have addressed her counterattack. They did nothing. So she's kind of a lame duck, and she's probably only going to slip from here. She's probably never going to get any better, and she's probably just going to keep sliding down to meta-ish soon to join Thor, to join her family, her siblings, if the devs don't patch her, with the next update. Yeah, so that covers almost everyone in the update. That covers Hela, Wenwu, and Kahori. The only one left, of course, is Nebula. Nebula actually got a really good rework. She was in the Out of the Meta Please rework category with characters like Dakin and Minerva and Sandman, and now she's actually solid. She doesn't have any support buffs. She doesn't have an insane leadership. She doesn't have PvP potential. She's not tier 4, so it's really weird to see a character this high with 0 tags. But it's just, yeah, she's just built for ABX. She's a very one-trick character. A one-trick character, for those of you that don't play other like RPG games, is a character that basically just does one thing well. A one-trick. You can think about it in terms of, like, if you play a MOBA, a one-trick is a player that can only play one character. They can't switch to different characters. They can't switch to different roles. They can't play, they only play support, or they only play ADC. They only play bot lane. They don't do it, or they only play like Draven or whatever. They only play, one champion. Nebula's basically a one trick for ABX. That's all she's really there for. That's all she's really outstanding for. And pretty much all other content she is middling for at best, which would put her squarely in, like, if it wasn't for ABX, she would be in borderline. She would be probably at the bottom of borderline with characters like Punisher, Luke Cage, Juggernaut. Yeah, so just keep note of that in case you're not a big-time ABX, ABL head. Also, since we're talking about it and we're on the topic, do you want an additional tag added for ABX, ABL meta characters? It may be too many. I would probably only put it on the DPS characters and not the supports and leaderships. But if that is something you guys want, we can add it to highlight characters like Nebula, who otherwise are naked. And then, yeah, that basically does it for the main update. Then we got the mid-month, which was the seasonal uniforms for Rogue and Phil Coulson. So in Phil Coulson's case, he just rises in value as a support, makes his way up to sort of the top tier of support characters. In some situations, you could argue that he's actually even better than Dazzler. Wasp obviously has PvP potential. Polaris has leadership and support. Ancient One has her own standalone PvP potential. And then Ironheart is just insanely good. But yeah, very, very good support in Phil Coulson. Solid buffs, some to heroes, some to all allies. So he does, you know, double dip on both sides. I mean, you could argue he's even a better support than this. I don't know. You could certainly argue that. Not really a good damage dealer. Not really a good standalone character. Not good for PvP. But as a support, yes, very, very good. And then Rogue, absolutely fantastic character. I still think Judgment is the way to go with her build, but she can also rock a Rage. She can even be proc friendly if you want to give that a try. Very easy to play, tanky enough. Got, you know, lots of buffs, gets access to lots of different effects. Has a really nice damage bump on her tier 3, and then has a damaging tier 4. Not 100% sure that everyone's going to be super impressed with her tier 4. I think it depends on your build. I think with a Rage, you don't see as much of a jump from tier 3 to tier 4. But with a Judgment, you may see more. But certainly worthy of being on most players' rosters if you can afford building her. If you can afford to buy her uniform, obviously. And then getting to level 80. Don't take any of this as an indication that you can do these things with her old uniforms. Rogue's newest uniform is by far and away her best. It's seasonal, I know. But yeah, you can't get away with any of these, you know, effects and any of these adjectives for her with the old uniforms. But yeah, with the new one, she absolutely rocks for PvE content. Not really much PvP ability. They actually took away her iframe ignore, which is crazy, or counter or whatever it was. But yeah, she did maintain you know, very high value PvE stuff, especially ABX, ABL, and world boss and stuff like that. So yeah, I do think she is worth investing in if you like the character and you know, need a female mutant hero. But yeah, with that, we wrap up the last tier list of 2023, releasing in 2024. Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of the shakeup. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button. Tell me how much you hate what they did to Hela or didn't do to Hela down below. I'll join you, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.